High Commander Reed stood at the observation deck of the Dominion's flagship, his tall frame reflected in the reinforced glass as he stared at the holographic display of a blue-green planet. Earth, as its inhabitants called it, spun slowly in the projection before him. His four-fingered hand moved through the display, zooming in on various locations across the planet's surface. "Primitive," he muttered, his voice carrying the distinctive clicking sound common to his species. "Simply primitive." Behind him, Captain Mark of the Scout Division cleared his throat. "Sir, we've completed our initial survey of their defenses." Reed turned, his silver eyes reflecting the starlight. "Report. The humans have minimal space presence, sir. A few orbital stations, a small base on their moon, and scattered satellites. Their most advanced weapons are nuclear-based, and their space vessels can barely reach their red neighbor planet." Mark's fingers danced across his tablet, bringing up more images. "They spend most of their resources fighting each other over strips of land and invisible borders." Reed's mouth curved into what his species considered a smile. "Perfect. The Council will be pleased. A resource-rich world with minimal defensive capabilities." He walked to his command console, bringing up more detailed scans of Earth's surface. "What of their military capabilities?" "Fragmented, sir. They have no unified defense force. Each region maintains its own military, often pointing weapons at their neighbors. Their most powerful weapons could hardly scratch our lowest-grade shields." Mark paused, then added, "Though there is one curious detail." Reed looked up sharply. "Speak." "They're remarkably adaptable. Our historical analysis shows they've advanced from primitive projectile weapons to nuclear capability in just a few hundred cycles. That's unusually fast." Reed dismissed the concern with a wave of his hand. "Many species show rapid advancement in their industrial age. It means nothing once they face a truly advanced civilization." He turned back to the hologram of Earth. "Have they detected us?" "No, sir. Our cloaking technology is well beyond their detection capabilities. They're still using radio waves and primitive digital communications." Reed nodded, satisfaction evident in his posture. "Prepare a report for the Council. Recommend immediate acquisition of this system." He paused, studying the planet's rotation. "Suggest a standard three-phase conquest. First, take their moon base to demonstrate our superiority. Second, destroy their orbital defenses. Third, accept their surrender." Mark made notes on his tablet but couldn't help asking, "Sir, what if they resist?" Reed actually laughed, a sharp barking sound that echoed across the observation deck. "Resist? With what? Their most advanced ships would take months to reach Mars. Our vessels can cross galaxies. Their strongest weapons couldn't penetrate our basic shields. Their armies still fight on the ground with wheeled vehicles." He shook his head, amused by the very thought. "No, Captain. They won't resist. Not for long." As Mark turned to leave, Reed called out one last time. "Oh, and Mark, add a note to the report. Suggest this be classified as a Class D conquest operation. No need to commit significant resources. A single battle group should be more than sufficient." "Yes, sir," Mark replied, leaving the observation deck. Alone again, Reed watched the hologram of Earth, already imagining how easy this conquest would be. The Dominion had subjugated dozens of worlds, and none had provided any real challenge. This one would be no different, just another primitive species to add to their growing empire. In his confidence, Reed failed to notice something crucial in the historical data scrolling past. Hidden in the reports was a pattern that should have worried him. Every time humans faced overwhelming odds, they didn't surrender. They innovated. Every time they seemed cornered, they found a way out. Every time history said they should fail, they succeeded. But Reed didn't see these warnings. He saw only what he expected to see, a primitive world ripe for conquest. In the coming months, he would learn just how wrong his assessment had been. But for now, he simply smiled at the blue planet spinning before him, already counting it among his victories. The Dominion was about to learn a costly lesson. Never judge a species just by its technology level. Sometimes, the most dangerous adversaries are the ones you underestimate. The moon base Artemis wasn't much to look at. A collection of gray domes and interconnected tunnels, built more for function than beauty. Inside the main control room, Commander Bill Parker watched the radar screen with growing concern. Something was wrong with their instruments. They kept showing ghost images, signals that appeared and disappeared without any pattern. "Running another diagnostic," reported Lisa, his chief technician. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel. "But sir, this is the 4th check today. The equipment is working fine." Parker leaned closer to the screen. 20 years in space had taught him one thing. When something felt wrong, it usually was. Keep checking. Something's out there. The first sign of real trouble came at 300 hours, Earth time. All communications with Earth suddenly cut off. Not just official channels, but everything. Even the personal entertainment feeds went dead. "Sir," Lisa's voice carried across the control room. "Massive energy readings. Coming from..." She paused, double-checking her readings. "Coming from everywhere." The air around the base seemed to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Then, as if someone had pulled back an invisible curtain, they appeared. Dozens of ships, their metallic hulls gleaming in the starlight. They were beautiful in a terrifying way. Smooth, curved vessels that made human spacecraft look like children's toys. Parker hit the base-wide alarm. "Battle stations, this is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." The Dominion ships struck without warning or demands for surrender. Their first shots were precise, taking out the base's main communication array and power generators. They expected the humans to panic, to run, to beg for mercy. They were wrong. "Get those mining lasers online," Parker shouted, running toward the emergency control center. The base had been built with scientific research and mineral extraction in mind, not combat. But humans had a long history of turning tools into weapons. Lisa's voice crackled over the emergency comm. "Mining lasers reconfigured, sir. They're not very accurate. But doesn't matter. Fire everything we've got." The mining lasers, designed to cut through lunar rock, lashed out at the alien ships. Most shots missed, but one didn't. A Dominion vessel, confident in its superior shields, hadn't bothered to take evasive action. The industrial-grade laser, powered by the base's remaining emergency generators, cut through its shields like they weren't there. In his command ship, Captain Mark watched in shock as one of his vessels split in two. Impossible. Their weapons are primitive. The humans weren't done. As Dominion forces breached the base, they found every section booby-trapped. Maintenance robots had been turned into mobile bombs. Airlocks cycled randomly, catching boarding parties off guard. Even the base's small complement of lunar rovers joined the fight, their mining drills turning into makeshift weapons. Parker stood in the emergency control center, watching his people fight back with everything they had. "Lisa, start the data burst transmission." "But sir, they're jamming all communications." "Use the mining transmitters. Different frequency. Narrow beam. They won't expect that." As the battle raged, a tight beam transmission shot from a hidden antenna, aimed straight at Earth. It contained everything they'd learned about the enemy in these brief, brutal minutes of combat. The base fell, of course. It was inevitable. But it took the Dominion 5 hours to capture what they thought would take 5 minutes, and the cost was higher than they could have imagined. 3 ships destroyed, 2 badly damaged, and dozens of soldiers dead. The last transmission from Moon Base Artemis reached Earth just before the final dome was breached. It was short, simple, and changed everything. "Earth Command, this is Artemis. They're coming. But they bleed. God help us all. They bleed." Base Commander Parker, signing off. In his flagship, High Commander Reed received the casualty reports with growing rage. This was supposed to be an easy victory, a simple demonstration of power. Instead, it had turned into a costly battle against opponents who should have been helpless. He didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. The humans weren't beaten. They were learning. The United Nations emergency session was unlike any in history. The massive chamber in New York was packed, but completely silent. On the main screen, the last transmission from Moon Base Artemis played again. They're coming. But they bleed. General Thomas stood at the podium, his weathered face grave. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 24 hours, maybe less. The enemy will expect us to fight among ourselves, to waste time arguing while they prepare their invasion. He paused, looking around the room. We must prove them wrong. In any other situation, what happened next would have seemed impossible. The Russian representative stood first. Russia offers its entire military force to a unified Earth defense. The Chinese delegate rose immediately after. China stands with Earth. One by one, every nation pledged its forces to a unified command. Old enemies set aside centuries of conflict in minutes. Border disputes were forgotten. Resources were pooled. The greatest military cooperation in human history was organized in under 3 hours. At the Pentagon, General Thomas met with his new international command staff. The room was filled with officers from 24 nations, all focused on a single goal: survival. The data burst from Artemis gave us crucial information. Colonel Maria explained, pointing to technical readouts on the main screen. Their ships are advanced, but they have weaknesses. Their shields can't handle our mining lasers. They're not designed to stop industrial cutting tools, because they never expected us to use them as weapons. Thomas nodded. What else? Their tactics, General Yuri added, his Russian accent thick with excitement. They're too perfect, too textbook. No adaptation, no improvisation. They expect us to fight by their rules. A smile spread across Thomas's face. Then let's show them how humans fight. Around the world, factories were converted overnight. Mining companies turned their equipment into weapons. Car manufacturers began producing armored vehicles. Tech companies reprogrammed satellites for military use. Every human innovation for the past century was being turned toward a single purpose. In orbit, the crew of the International Space Station watched as the Dominion fleet appeared. But instead of fear, they felt ready. The station had been transformed. Solar panels now concealed missiles. Research equipment had been converted into sensors and weapons. Station Commander Rogers looked at his crew. American, Russian, Chinese, European, all working together. Begin Operation Hornet's Nest. Across Earth's orbit, thousands of satellites suddenly changed course. Communication satellites, weather monitors, even old space debris, all moved according to a carefully choreographed plan. The Dominion ships found themselves surrounded by a cloud of potential threats, unable to tell which were dangerous and which were decoys. In his flagship, High Commander Reed watched with growing unease. This is impossible. Their satellites are primitive. They can't move like this. Sir, Captain Mark reported, we're detecting energy signatures from everything. They've turned their entire orbital infrastructure into a weapon. Reed slammed his fist on his command console. Launch the attack. Now. Before they. He never finished the sentence. The first wave of converted Earth satellites struck, not with advanced weapons, but with simple kinetic force. Tons of metal, accelerated by gravity, slammed into Dominion ships at orbital speeds. The impacts weren't enough to destroy the advanced vessels, but they disrupted shield harmonics just enough. Just enough for the real surprise to work. Every mining laser on Earth's surface fired simultaneously, their industrial-grade beams suddenly very useful against ships with disrupted shields. The battle for Earth's orbit had begun, and humanity's message was clear. This is our home. Every piece of it, from our highest satellite to our deepest mine, is a weapon, and we will use all of it. In the UN chamber, General Thomas watched the first reports come in. Send word to all commands, he ordered. Execute Phase 2. Let's show them why you never corner a species that turned rocks into spaceships. The war for Earth was just beginning, and humanity was done playing by alien rules. High Commander Reed watched in disbelief as another Dominion warship exploded, not from advanced weapons or superior technology, but from a swarm of repurposed weather satellites packed with simple explosives. His mighty invasion fleet was being picked apart by what the humans called space junk. "Sir," Captain Mark reported, his voice shaking, "we've lost contact with Battle Group 3. The humans have somehow created electromagnetic storms in their upper atmosphere. Our communications are. They're using their planet's magnetic field against us." Reed's fist clenched. "Impossible. They're primitives. They can't." An alarm blared through the command ship. On the main screen, hundreds of small objects appeared, launching from Earth's surface. "Those aren't missiles," Mark said, checking his instruments. "They're civilian spacecraft, transport vessels." Reed's eyes widened. Evasive action. Now. But it was too late. The civilian ships, loaded with industrial explosives and piloted by volunteer crews, slammed into the Dominion's support vessels. The humans were turning their entire transport fleet into weapons. On Earth, in a hidden command center deep underground, General Thomas watched the space battle unfold. Status report on Project Thunderstorm. Colonel Maria looked up from her console. "Ready, sir. Weather control satellites are in position. If this works." "It'll work," Thomas interrupted. "Because it has to." He pressed a button on his command console. "All units, execute Operation Thunderstorm." Across the globe, modified weather satellites activated simultaneously. They weren't powerful enough to control the weather, but they didn't need to. They just needed to nudge it a little. In key locations, storm systems began to form. In orbit, Reed finally understood what the humans were doing. They were creating a worldwide network of electromagnetic disturbances, using their planet's natural weather patterns to disrupt Dominion sensors and communications. "These primitives," he hissed, "they're using their planet itself as a weapon." On the ground, the battle was even stranger. When Dominion forces tried to land, they found every city, every settlement transformed into a maze of traps and ambushes. Civilians had turned their homes into fortresses. Construction equipment became mobile artillery. Even the streets themselves were weapons. Automated traffic systems guided Dominion ground forces into prepared kill zones. In New York, a construction crew used their crane to drop a shipping container full of explosives onto a Dominion walker. In Tokyo, subway trains packed with demolition charges ran on automated systems, becoming underground missiles. In London, the entire power grid was transformed into an electromagnetic pulse weapon. "Sir," Mark reported, "our ground forces are requesting immediate evacuation. The humans, they're not fighting like any species we've encountered. Every tool, every machine, every piece of infrastructure is a weapon. We can't tell their soldiers from their civilians. Everything is a threat." Reed watched as another wave of civilian ships approached his fleet. But this time, they were different. Cargo ships had been converted into crude but effective missile platforms. Passenger vessels now carried hastily mounted mining lasers. Even space tourist shuttles had been armed with improvised weapons. "They're learning," Reed whispered. "Every time we destroy one of their weapons, they build two more from the wreckage. Every tactic we use, they adapt to within hours." In the underground command center, General Thomas received word of another successful counterattack. "Send word to all commands," he ordered. "Phase 3 begins now. Show them what happens when you force humanity to get creative." As alarms blared across the Dominion fleet, Reed finally understood their terrible mistake. They had expected to fight a primitive military force. Instead, they had gone to war with an entire species that turned everything, absolutely everything, into a weapon. And this was just the beginning of humanity's response. In a hidden laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Alex stood before a group of military leaders, his hands trembling with excitement. Behind him, Protected by a force field, floated a piece of twisted metal, debris from a fallen Dominion ship. "We've done it," he announced, his voice echoing in the vast underground chamber. "We've cracked their shield technology. But more importantly, we've improved it." General Thomas stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the floating metal. "Explain." "The Dominion's shields are perfect, flawless even. That's their weakness." Alex pressed a button, and a holographic display showed the shield patterns. "They're too perfect, too rigid. Our shields, they're messy, chaotic. They bend instead of break." In orbit, the first human ship equipped with the new technology faced off against a Dominion cruiser. Captain Roberts stood on the bridge of the HMS Defiance, once a simple cargo vessel, now humanity's first true warship. "Shield status?" he asked, watching the Dominion ship approach. "Hybrid shields at full power," his engineer reported. "Human chaos meets alien precision." The Dominion ship fired, its energy weapons powerful enough to vaporize a normal vessel. But the Defiance's shields didn't try to block the blast. They absorbed it, bent around it, used its own energy against it. In his flagship, High Commander Reed watched in horror as the supposedly primitive human vessel not only survived but counterattacked. "Impossible. They're shields. They're using our own technology." "Sir," Captain Mark's voice was tight with concern, "they're not just using it. They're using it better than we are." Back in the underground lab, Alex wasn't finished. "We've learned more from studying their wreckage than they've learned from fighting us for months. Look at this." He pressed another button, and a new hologram appeared. "Their quantum communications. We've figured out how to disrupt them. Their sensor systems. We can fool them. Their weapon frequencies. We can match them." Around the world, factories began producing the new hybrid technology. Humans didn't try to copy the Dominion's perfect, rigid designs. Instead, they mixed alien precision with human creativity. The results were unlike anything either species had seen before. In space, more converted ships joined the Defiance. Cargo vessels became battleships. Mining ships transformed into carriers. Earth's improvised fleet was becoming a real space navy, armed with weapons that combined human ingenuity with alien technology. "Launch the counterstrike," General Thomas ordered. "Show them what humanity can do with their hand-me-downs." The battle that followed stunned the Dominion fleet. Human ships darted between their perfect formations, shields bending and flexing in ways their rigid designs couldn't match. Earth's vessels used modified mining beams that phased through Dominion shields, their frequencies constantly shifting in unpredictable patterns. "They're not supposed to be able to do this," Reed shouted as another of his ships fell to the human attack. "Their minds are primitive. Their technology is basic." "Sir," Mark said quietly, "I don't think we're fighting primitives anymore. We gave them a glimpse of advanced technology, and in months they've done what took us centuries. They're not just copying us. They're improving on everything they learn." In the lab, Alex showed his final discovery. Their ships are perfect machines, designed by perfect minds. But humans? We're messy. We make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes lead to breakthroughs they never imagined. The tide of war had turned. Humanity had taken the Dominion's greatest weapons and made them their own. But they hadn't just copied them. They had transformed them, improved them, made them uniquely human. As the Defiance led Earth's fleet in another victory, Captain Roberts sent a message to all ships. "Remember what they thought about us. Remember how they underestimated us. And show them what humans can really do." The war was far from over, but for the first time, the Dominion knew fear. They had come to conquer primitives, only to create something far more dangerous. Humans with advanced technology, and the creativity to use it in ways they never imagined. The Dominion's home defense fleet had never lost a battle. For 1,000 years, they had guarded their core worlds with perfect formations and unbeatable tactics. Now they watched in horror as human ships appeared from nowhere, using their own jump technology in ways they had never imagined. Multiple contacts, The Dominion commander shouted. They're everywhere. The human fleet, led by the newly commissioned Earth ship Victory, didn't emerge in a single group as Dominion doctrine demanded. Instead, they jumped in scattered formation, appearing and disappearing like ghostly warriors in an ancient battle dance. Captain Robert stood on Victory's bridge, his face lit by the glow of alien stars. "Begin Operation Thunderclap," he ordered. "Show them how Earth fights." The human ships attacked from all directions at once. They didn't maintain perfect battle lines or follow standard space combat rules. Each ship moved independently, their hybrid shields bending space itself around them. On his flagship, now retreating from Earth, High Commander Reed received the news with growing dread. How did they find our supply lines? Our secret bases? Our defense positions? "Sir," Captain Mark reported, his voice heavy. "The slave species, they're helping the humans. Every world we conquered, every race we subdued, they're all sharing information. The humans promised them freedom." Reed slammed his fist down. "Impossible. Those species have been under our control for generations. They're peaceful, docile." "They were waiting," Mark interrupted, then quickly added, "Sir, they were waiting for someone to show them it was possible to fight back." Back on Earth, in the Combined Command Center, General Thomas coordinated the multi-species rebellion that was spreading through Dominion space like wildfire. On his screens, dozens of alien representatives reported success after success. "The humans taught us to think differently," one alien leader said. "They showed us that being civilized doesn't mean being weak." Dr. Alex, now head of Earth's reverse engineering program, worked with scientists from a dozen alien species. Together, they weren't just copying Dominion technology anymore. They were creating entirely new systems that even the Dominion had never dreamed of. "Humans have this amazing ability," an alien scientist observed. "They don't just use technology, they play with it. They break it and rebuild it in new ways. It's beautiful." The Dominion's perfect empire was crumbling. Their rigid military doctrine, unchanged for centuries, couldn't adapt to human warfare. Every tactic they had perfected over generations was being turned against them by creatures they had dismissed as primitives. On a Dominion colony world, a group of former slaves watched human ships break through the orbital defenses. Unlike Dominion attacks, which would have destroyed everything in their path, the humans targeted only military installations. When the dust settled, the humans landed and offered not commands, but choices. "We're not here to conquer," a human commander told the gathered aliens. "We're here to free, to help, to teach, and to learn." The Dominion thought their way was the only way. "We're here to prove them wrong." In deep space, the Victory led another assault on a Dominion stronghold. But this time, they weren't alone. Ships of different designs, from dozens of species, fought alongside them, each bringing their own strengths, their own ideas, their own ways of thinking. "Sir," a sensor operator called to Captain Robert, "the Dominion fleet is retreating again. They're falling back to their core systems." Robert nodded, a grim smile on his face. "Send word to Earth. Phase 6 is complete. The Dominion isn't just losing a war, they're losing their empire. Not to superior weapons or better technology, but to an idea. Freedom is stronger than control." As news of another victory reached Earth, General Thomas looked at the galaxy map. The Dominion's perfect, ordered empire was dissolving into a chaotic but vibrant alliance of free species, and at the heart of it all was humanity, not ruling, but leading, not controlling, but inspiring. The final battle was approaching. But first, humanity would teach the galaxy a lesson about the power of chaos, creativity, and the unbreakable spirit of those who fight for freedom. The Dominion's capital world looked nothing like what humans had imagined. Instead of cold metal and rigid structures, it was beautiful, a world of crystal spires and perfect geometric patterns. Now those perfect patterns were broken as the combined fleet of Earth and its alien allies surrounded the planet. High Commander Reed stood in his palace, watching through vast windows as human ships moved into position. They didn't come with overwhelming force as the Dominion would have done. They sent only enough ships to make their point. Surrender was the only option. "Sir," Captain Mark said softly, "the human commander requests your presence for peace talks. Not in orbit, but here on the surface." He paused, then added, "They're trusting us not to trap them." Reed turned, his silver eyes reflecting the light of his dying empire. "Why would they take such a risk?" "They say it's to show respect, sir, to show that this isn't about revenge." In the palace's great hall, General Thomas walked in with just 2 guards, a show of trust that shocked the Dominion leaders. With him was Dr. Alex, carrying data tablets filled with technological innovations that humanity was willing to share. "You could destroy us," Reed said, his voice heavy with defeat. "Your weapons now surpass ours. Your freed allies want revenge. Why offer peace?" Thomas smiled, but it wasn't the smile of a conqueror. "Because that's not who we are. We don't want to rule you. We don't want to destroy you. We want to trade with you, learn from you, grow with you." Alex stepped forward, activating a holographic display. "Your technology is beautiful in its perfection. We've learned so much from it. But look what happens when we combine it with human creativity." The display showed new innovations, combinations of Dominion precision and human ingenuity that could benefit both species. "You've already changed everything," Reed said, gesturing to the ships visible through the windows. "Our perfect empire was too perfect," Thomas interrupted gently. "Perfect things can't grow, can't adapt, can't improve. But look what we've accomplished in just months of working with your technology. Imagine what we could do together, as allies instead of enemies." In orbit, Captain Robert watched from the Victory's bridge as ships from dozens of species moved in formation together. Former slaves now flew alongside their former masters. Races that had never left their home systems now traveled between stars. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving messages from across Dominion space. The freed species, they're not calling for revenge. They're calling for peace. They say humanity taught them something more important than fighting." "And what's that?" Robert asked. "How to forgive, how to move forward, how to build something new." Back in the palace, Thomas laid out humanity's terms. They were nothing like what the Dominion expected. No demands for territory, no crushing reparations. Instead, they proposed a new alliance. The Dominion would keep its core worlds but free its conquered peoples. Their technology would be shared, not stolen. Their knowledge would be exchanged, not taken. "Why?" Reed asked again. "After everything we did." "Because that's the real strength of humanity," Thomas replied. "Not our ability to fight, but our ability to forgive. Not our power to destroy, but our power to create. We don't want to be conquerors. We want to be teachers, students, friends, allies." As the peace treaty was signed, Dr. Alex worked with Dominion scientists, showing them how their perfect technology could be improved by adding a little human chaos. Watching them work together, Reed finally understood what his people had missed about humans. "We thought we were perfect," he said to Mark, "but they taught us that perfection is a dead end. Growth comes from chaos, from mistakes, from trying new things." He looked out at the changed galaxy. "They didn't just defeat us. They made us better." The war was over, but something more important had begun. A new age where perfection and chaos, precision and creativity, order and innovation worked together. And at its heart was the species that had taught the galaxy its greatest lesson. Strength without wisdom is nothing, and true power lies not in conquering others, but in lifting them up. The Dominion had thought fighting humans would be easy. Instead, humans had taught them how to be better than they ever imagined they could be.